It seems that every day we're reminded that we live in an era of great power rivalry, that the rules-based order is fading, that the strong can do what they can and the weak must suffer what they must. And this aphorism of Thucydides is presented as inevitable, as the natural logic of international relations reasserting itself. And faced with this logic, there is a strong tendency for countries to go along to get along, to accommodate, to avoid trouble, to hope that compliance will buy safety. Well, it won't. So what are our options? In 1978, the Czech dissident Václav Havel, later president, wrote an essay called The Power of the Powerless. And in it, he asked a simple question: how did the communist system sustain itself? And his answer began with a greengrocer. Every morning, this shopkeeper places a sign in his window: "Workers of the world unite." He doesn't believe it. No one does. But he places the sign anyway to avoid trouble, to signal compliance, to get along. And because every shopkeeper on every street does the same, the system persists. Not through violence alone, but through the participation of ordinary people in rituals they privately know to be false. Havel called this living within a lie. The system's power comes not from its truth, but from everyone's willingness to perform as if it were true. And its fragility comes from the same source. When even one person stops performing, when the greengrocer removes his sign, the illusion begins to crack. Friends, it is time for companies and countries to take their signs down.
In what can only be described as an explosive, groundbreaking speech by Prime Minister Mark Carney, it kicked off the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. And in his words, the old order is not coming back. Thrilled to be joined by Mike and Paul, as always. And gentlemen, with the world leaders there, with Trump arriving on Air Force One after his barrage on Truth Social, Paul, Mark Carney basically laid his cards on the table saying, okay, the old way's gone and we're going to start with a new way.
Yeah, it's interesting, Jim, how it's escalated from tariffs to a new world order. So, as Mike mentioned earlier before the show, the door got cracked open with tariffs, and now this is kind of steamrolled into new world orders, country control, military. There's all kinds of components. All our pillars that we talk about on a weekly basis are all folding under this umbrella and culminating in this speech that's about to come tomorrow in Davos. This speech, I can only imagine, we'll talk about it in a minute, but I can only imagine what he's about to tell them.
I mean, Trump's speech.
Trump's speech.
Yeah, because Carney basically fired the first salvo with his speech today.
Oh, yeah.
And it will be fascinating to see how Trump responds.
Do you think it was an accident that they put that order together? I mean,
no.
To be honest with you, Canada-US is probably one of the mainstay discussions on geopolitics at the moment. It almost feels like they put Carney up there to have the first word.
Yeah, and a little bit, I guess that was the order that he had to accept, but a little bit shocking that he would actually do it in advance of Trump's speech. So strategically, I guess maybe that was determined or that was something he wanted. But I probably would have actually waited to see where he was going first and then gone forward. But
it makes it so easy for Trump to show up with his speech and say, well, we all know what Mark Carney said. That guy's a fool. I've always said he was a fool. He has no idea what he's talking about. This is not true. It actually lines Trump up to make a fool of Carney on the global stage, or at least start to combat each of the things that Carney just said in his speech.
Carney dropped a lot of truth bombs this morning in Switzerland. He spoke for a lot of world leaders. And President Macron spoke to reporters and said, quote, "I do not intend to speak with President Trump at Davos." So that was unheard of, a World Economic Forum with the leader of one of the biggest countries in Europe saying, I have no desire to speak to the U.S. president.
Right. But they're in a different, they're in a different scenario. So different, because they're in Europe, they're further away. We have a whole different issue given our proximity. And, the Western Hemisphere. So back before Christmas, we posted something, which was the national security strategy the national security strategy for the United States. And
Not a lengthy document.
well, the Western Hemisphere portion for us wasn't.
Yeah.
It was a lengthy document for the whole world, but for us, it basically laid out some key points that he wanted to get across. And I just wanted to. I was reading them this morning. So, the United States must reconsider our military presence in the Western Hemisphere. This means 4 obvious things: the readjustment of our global military presence to address urgent threats in our hemisphere, especially the missions identified in this strategy, and away from theaters whose relative import to America national security has declined in recent decades or years. So that's number 1. Number 2, a more suitable Coast Guard and Navy presence to control sea lanes to thwart illegal and unwanted migration, to reduce human and drug trafficking, and to control key transit routes in a crisis. 3, target deployments to secure the border and defeat cartels, including, where necessary, the use of lethal force to replace the failed law. Venezuela, right?
Yeah.
4, establishing or expanding access in strategically important locations. Expanding access in strategically important locations.
Our Arctic
Greenland.
and Greenland.
So historically, since NATO was formed in 1949, they call it the GI-UK gap. Greenland, Iceland, the UK. Any Russian submarine coming towards America has to come between Greenland and Iceland, or Iceland and the UK. You can't get to the North Atlantic to get to America without going through there first.
Representation from Denmark, and of course our discussion and history just shows the U.S. has had a heavy presence on Greenland for decades and decades. They've reduced that over the past number of years, but they're saying to Trump, no, go ahead, bring your troops.
It's in the documentation. They're allowed to.
You're welcome to set it all up here. Please come and do that.
And this morning he said, because the UK had surrendered
the Diego Garcia.
They'd surrendered Diego Garcia.
Yeah.
They basically said that, look at how weak you were to do that, how our military base there is now at threat because you surrendered the island. Therefore, Greenland has to be ours. So that's his
in other words,
right?
we can't have this potential.
You can't be, Denmark can't be making the decision what happens to Greenland. We have to control it for those reasons, and that's why. And I'm not supporting this, but I'm just saying we tried to tell everyone in December. We actually did a read because we were coming up to Christmas, and we're like, everyone should just listen to this.
But no one did.
No, it didn't. And the one thing we're learning about the U.S. and Donald Trump is they are on a mission. They're going in a direction. When we were all off at Christmas, they weren't, right? They were working on an invasion plan. They were moving. They were
almost doing that plan on Christmas Day. That was the original plan
from
for
Florida.
Venezuela.
They would, move their command post right beside the golf course, and they were moving forward.
Had the stuffing, drop some bombs.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. but they are, I think we're seeing again. He's plotted a plan, and he's going to move in that direction.
Paul, I don't think people are ready to read a document from Donald Trump. He does a lot of talking. We don't hear a lot about his documentation of strategy and planning.
Right.
Here it is.
Here it is.
Okay, well, 2 things. A, I doubt that he wrote it.
No.
I think we all know who wrote it.
But the other thing is,
he's already done jail time for Trump.
No matter what you think about Mark Carney, what he said today is echoing the feeling of world leaders.
Yeah,
the old way is gone.
What we had in place that provided security and trade agreements and staving off small problems that could turn into bigger problems. And then just hearing our prime minister use the phrase that only conspiracy theorists were good to use before, the new world order. coming out of his mouth not once but twice in the same speech.
Because he's seen, like,
It's the truth.
The reality is staring him in the face. And the threats from Donald Trump to leave NATO, the end of NATO, that means all those massive U.S. military bases in Germany, in Italy, in the UK, if they leave, you know who it benefits the most? Vladimir Putin and Russia.
Yeah.
There's no American military presence in Europe. He could do whatever he wants.
Now, the other thing is, and Jim, you kind of pointed this out when we were talking earlier, you can send a military operation out of an air base in the Midwest of the United States, undetected, make a bombing attack, and be back at home before dinner time, and nobody can stop you.
Nobody.
Do they need to have
technology coming online that's even more advanced?
Do they need to have a military base then that is strategically placed in Europe or anywhere else, or even Greenland at this point? You know, that makes me wonder, okay, Greenland sounds like a bully point, because if your weaponizing allows you to reach across the world in a couple of hours and make devastating moves, why do you need to be in Greenland?
For Navy reasons, I believe they think with a bigger military presence there, it's a bigger defense against anyone coming. They have you'd have to get through them first to get to America.
And I see that.
The radar would go off.
Exactly right. And all the tripwires. Yeah.
Okay, so really set the tripwires, set up the radars, but the
he
military
wants to control it. Like what he's saying here, Mike, he's saying he doesn't want to have to ask anyone for the rights. He doesn't want to have to ask anyone for the accesses. He doesn't want to have to, call Denmark and ask if he can do this, or depend on them to do something, or worry that they're going to sell part of that continent or the country to anyone else.
For example, the Australians to do mining, to the Chinese, for example, maybe to do resources.
As Canadians, we've got to wake up fast, because when he posts on Truth Social, one photo of him planting the American flag in Greenland, and the next photo is a map of North America.
Yeah, Nick, if you don't mind, we'll put that up at this point, that map of this hemisphere.
That's not done by accident.
Right. No, that was pretty nicely drawn.
There's a reason that's being posted and constantly thrown in our face. It's beyond 51st state. This is all part of America now, because resources and strategic reasons. And what as a country can we do about it? The speech today by Prime Minister Carney in Switzerland is not just to the world, but to Canadians sort of sleepwalking through their lives, the reality that we're facing.
Establish and expand access in strategically important locations.
Northern Canada is the most important.
We've been deemed a strategically important location.
100%.
He said it right here.
Yeah. And let's face it,
right here.
The brains in the Pentagon and the White House and Trump would rather see bloodshed and destruction in Canadian soil before it crosses the 49th parallel.
It's interesting to note something, Paul, you said earlier. The American perspective on this, and Jim, you pointed out, you lived in California as a youngster, as a teenager. Americans barely care about the North as it is. Aside from New York, you pointed out that some of the kids you went to school with in California didn't know where Maine was. And Paul, you point out it's a capitalist society.
Oh yeah.
They're not interested in virtue signaling like we are. They're not all that interested in putting the environment.
They don't care about
anything.
Canada.
And they certainly don't care about us.
No. Well, you look at the primaries right now in the U.S. I don't know if you're following it at all, but quite frankly, he's doing fairly well. I am shocked that he is doing as well as he's doing.
But the primaries are in November, correct?
Yeah. So the polling for everything
between now and then, who knows what he's going to do on the world stage, and who knows how that affects the polling.
And it only emboldens him to see these polls, by the way. So, every time somebody puts out that he's doing a good job, he pushes a little bit harder.
Can I throw some at you? This is interesting. So you go on. So this is, again, and I know the speech this morning from our Prime Minister, I get it and I understand it. But in this paper, the national security paper, he says, in the Western Hemisphere and everywhere in the world, the United States should make clear that American goods, services, and technologies are far better to buy in the long run, because they are higher in quality and do not come with the same kind of strings that other countries' assistance. That said, we will reform our own system to expedite approvals and licensing, again, to make ourselves the partner of choice. The choice all countries should face is whether they want to live in an American-led world of sovereign countries, and free economies, or in a parallel one in which they are influenced by countries on the other side of the world.
Yeah, he doesn't want us dealing with other hemispheres.
But here's the irony. The number one selling car in the US is usually the Corolla or the Honda Civic.
Yeah.
And they're on a Chinese-made iPhone. You know, like, so he's saying all that, but the fact is most of the manufacturing, a lot of the stuff that's consumed, Nike, most of it's made in Vietnam.
Yep.
Right?
Well, they say if you wanted a pair of Nike shoes manufactured in the USA, you would start at $1,200 US.
But is that okay? And I get you, but is that, you know, and he'll blame that on the Biden administration and previous administrations.
Yeah.
Is that about to become a thing of the past? So, you know, I don't know what his.
So force Nike to make stuff in America, force Apple to make their phones in America.
Exactly. So is this all, you know, when he pulled all those tech oligarchs around the table and he said to them, hey, time out, you know, you're coming back to the United States, and they're like, well, I can't produce that phone for, you know, $399.99. That thing's going to go up to $1,200. And he's like, fine. And he said it to them. He did. He said, you know, remember Apple, you know, the CEO.
Oh, Tim Cook?
Yeah,
Tim Cook,
he was like, yes, sir. You know, I'll figure it out. Don't worry about that. You know, they all came to the table relatively quick. And as this changes, as this doctrine, you know, comes into effect, he's, you know, rebuilding the U.S. in this vision. And I think, you know, from the sound of it, he sees that moving to us.
But Paul, at what cost? Like the damage being done to the relationships, and for you in business, relationships are everything. Mm-hmm. To do something to your benefit, to ruin the relationships of this leader, that leader, your friends, these countries, relationships that may not be rebuilt.
He does not operate that way. He has no friends. He's had no friends since the day he started.
So say you're the next U.S. president, then you start, say, whatever, President Wixson, but you have no friends, no trading partners, nothing.
Yeah, he doesn't care.
But does he foresee, so this is interesting too, and then, you know, on a bigger global scheme, does he foresee the world forming into bigger nations?
Yeah, I think he sees a four-quadrant planet.
Exactly, right? So China, India, you know, the United States. So he sees, you know, 4 to 6 players potentially in the end run here.
Super countries, say 5 super countries.
Yeah, 5 super countries. Right. And they amalgamate, they just go in and assume all these other countries. And quite frankly, that becomes the new, you know, when they talk about new world order, which I hate that expression, quite frankly.
I like it in wrestling.
It gives me it gives me the creeps. But
it's weird. It just feels very evil.
It just feels like from a bad movie. But you know, if that's what it is that what he's envisioning? Because when you read this strategy, it sure does look like that's what he's forming. So the reason he's pulling back to the Western Hemisphere is, I'm going to control this, and you're going to stay there. And we're going to be big enough to actually do commerce within our own hemisphere.
Well, think about
Go
that.
ahead, Mike.
Sorry,
no,
think
please.
about what that happens at the moment that you have super countries or quadrant countries around the hemispheric countries or alliances. First of all, the first thing that Donald Trump hates is being part of NATO, because it is too far away and he's not interested in participating with all these other countries. But secondly, if he sets it up this way, he only has to deal with Paul in that hemisphere, Jim in that hemisphere. You go deal with your problem. Here's what we need from each other, and 4 deals are cut.
So you're
not 154 deals.
But so you're telling me, countries around the world, around the world with 2, 3, 4, 5, 1,000 years of history will all have to join together. Spain, France, Italy, and England and Germany to be one country. I don't know. Like, it's difficult to think. Like, I mean, as a proud Canadian, it's one true. We're only X amount of old, but think about some of these countries around the world who are 5, 6, 7 times older than us, and now they're all have to be one.
Here's something interesting. While there's no precise count, research and expert analysis notably from U of T's Aisha Ahmad, suggests a hypothetical U.S. invasion of Canada would trigger widespread sustained resistance, potentially 400,000 people in an insurgency, or 1% of the population, turning the country into a costly decades-long quagmire for the U.S., akin to historical insurgencies like Afghanistan. And despite Canada's smaller formal military, experts point to Canada's high civilian gun ownership, urbanized population, and the history of resistance. What are your thoughts? How do we handle the U.S. coming in with this new world order in this hemisphere?
There's no question there will be a segment of the population who would try to entertain a guerrilla campaign, but there's a large segment of the population who escape war-torn countries and poverty and famine, who don't want their house blown up, don't want to risk their families' lives. That's the big question. Are you willing to have your house blown up and have you and all your family killed in a guerrilla war?
You know, they are one EMP blast away from just hooking us up to their hydro and giving us that out. So, you know, there's a lot of distance between here and there, but it doesn't feel like it when Trump is moving so fast. You know, he's barely out of Venezuela and he's headed to Greenland. The whole world is up his ass about this, and he still doesn't care.
Who's going to stop him?
That's what he thinks.
No, he has a majority. So, and
no, muscle-wise.
Oh, muscle-wise. Yeah, muscle-wise. And quite frankly, we did a show earlier, right? It's an empire now.
Yeah.
Because Russia...
It's not a republic.
No,
so
it's
he's
not.
He's moving on his own steam.
Yeah.
Regardless of, you know, like today or tomorrow or whatever, the decision on tariffs come down.
Oh, the court decision?
The court decision.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
They've already said, Scott Besson and the group has already said, that's fine. Whatever it is, we have other avenues to enact tariffs.
Right.
So we're just, if that's one, we'll just go another direction. That's why we're going to go. And so they're going to just keep moving. And that's the decision they've made. You know, they've been transparent. The one thing we can say, you know, criticism, I think there's lots of it. They have been very transparent of what they want to do.
Well, Trump is a pretty transparent guy, minute to minute. You know, if he doesn't,
he's not in depth.
No, if he doesn't like the way his shoes feels, Buster Brown's a piece of garbage. So he really does shoot from the hip a lot. What frightens me is that document is very well thought through. Mm-hmm. It's a strategy that we're already seeing happen. His plan for strategic empire building in North America is on paper, and so far, everything he said he's going to do, he's sticking to.
And here's the problem for Canada and a lot of the countries who are opposing him, who are just in the infancy of rebuilding their armed forces and military. But it takes time. Say,
yeah,
like,
if we wanted to do something, how long would it take us?
2, 3, 5 years till a lot of this equipment's online.
We can't get weapons in under 10 years in this country. I don't know, and especially if they're U.S. suppliers.
And so here's the issue.
They're not going to weaponize us, are they?
No.
So say you're, okay, I'm going to have to buy helicopters from Airbus and tanks from Germany and guns from the UK. By the time we get them, it could be over.
And let me put it to you this way, Jim. If we show up needing 40 planes and the U.S. shows up needing 400 planes, whose business are you taking first?
Well,
the U.S. is going to win just based on sheer buying power.
That's what's happening with the F-35 Lightning in the Canadian the tranche of 16 planes.
Yeah.
You have to wait till they've supplied the U.S. Air Force and Navy. Then you get yours.
Also,
they're always going to get first
what
right.
supply chain comes out of the U.S. that could be stopped in the process of building any of this weaponry or getting us ready again? We do a lot of business with the U.S. I'm going to imagine everything from bullets to uniforms. We don't make anything. So everything we're going to get, we're buying from someplace, let me guess, mainly the U.S. All they have to do is say, nope, we're not supplying you these goods, and these goods. And that procurement suddenly takes 15 years longer.
If you can even get it.
If you can get it.
And, you know, recently, you know, he wants to increase his military budget to 1.5 trillion.
Oh.
He's at 1 trillion now, Paul?
1 trillion. So they're just under $1 trillion every year.
Yeah.
So the massive industry. And they want to increase it really to a wartime budget. So that's what they're looking to do. So he'll get it. My guess is because of the control he has. And so he'll get the approval for it and he'll put it into play.
Now, here's something you talked about before our meeting here about Trump's negotiation tactic. Say, for sake of argument, he pulls back on 51st state, but tells Canada, I won't do this, but you need to do this, this, and this militarily. And that means buying your tanks from the USA, no more Saab Gripens. Like, you'll buy it from us.
Let me see what the answer would be. We're in. We're whatever you want. We're going to do that.
And if he all of a sudden says, I'm going to do this and I'm not going to do that now, but you need to do this and this, the U.S. military industrial complex has jobs for decades now supplying all these countries.
What if he says, we're going to employ your military, but we're going to make them part of the U.S. military based in Canada? That's another option that I've seen presented out there.
Again, the American goods, services, and technologies are far better to buy in the long run because they don't come with strings. So he's saying it right there. Like he really does believe that we should be doing that right now. Like, and I think that's a mistake we're making. So we got into tariffs and we chased down tariffs. We're like, no, we're not going to do tariffs. We're going to go to globalism. You know, the prime minister today, they had a question that, you know, about globalism. And he's like, we need to trade with different countries. And he's been, you know, on a tear going around meeting with everyone, trying to set up deals, you know, so he can keep, you know, goods and services and investment in Canada. I get it. But here you have another guy, you know, Trump, on the other hand, he's saying, quite frankly, you shouldn't be worrying about any of that.
Come on here.
No, you don't have a choice. It's not come here. You are going to come here.
So stop wasting your time.
You're going to pay whatever price, because with that procurement of goods and services and technologies, it comes a condition that you're going to be part of the Western Hemisphere family.
I mean, and then it goes back to what Carney said about weaponizing the economy. If he says you're not allowed to build any cars in Ontario, there goes our automobile industry.
But if that's
so the interesting thing, so let's talk about the difference between Americans and Canadians. So this is kind of where I really noticed it coming, you know, having lived in the States, come back. I really noticed it. What do Americans do in that case?
If that happened to Americans?
Yeah. It does happen to America. You know, a mine closes.
Yeah. I don't know. What do they do?
The U-Hauls pull up.
And they move.
And that town's dead.
Yep.
So that means potentially Windsor and Oshawa and Oakville could be decimated.
The mortgage meltdown. I watched Florida. I watched U-Hauls moving, like literally thousands of U-Hauls packing up and moving out of Florida. I was there. And Americans understand. And then they start up again. Like, they're very resilient that way.
Go to Oklahoma, go to Ohio, go
exactly. They basically, and you know, they you know, our housing show. A lot of times there are some beautiful neighborhoods in the U.S. with very wealthy people, but for the most part, the average citizens live in very humble abodes, right? That are made out of wood, siding,
no foundation.
Yeah, no foundation, no basements, right?
Yeah.
When it's time, the house gets sold for $65,000 and they're down the highway in the U-Haul.
I heard a funny story about
and they're
this.
good with that, right?
Yeah.
They're understood. That's kind of
That's capitalism.
Well, it's also part of their military training. So a lot of them who don't, who aren't born wealthy and don't come from, you know, the upper echelon, they join the military, and they're taught to be ready to move, be ready to adapt, be ready to build. This
operation will end and we will move on.
Exactly. Yeah. So they're very good. You know, the guys I work with, right? I was always shocked, like how resilient they were. Like, you know, I'd come in the morning, I'd be bummed out about a problem. Like, they'd be on a whiteboard strategizing the problem out and ready to go.
Right.
Like, you know, and whereas it'd take me a minute and I'd be like, holy cow, we're going, right? And then we'd go and we'd figure it out. And, you know, we'd all pitch in, and it was an initiative. So we did it. But that's a very different, like, well, you ask a Canadian to move across country for $1,000, forget about it. Right?
Okay.
Ask an American.
Okay.
They're in the U-Haul. Like, man, they're packed.
Right.
But
for
Paul,
$1,000.
To that point, what Carney said today, all his, basically his sound bites and everything that's going to be viral around the world, I think part of it was to Trump and the world leaders, and I think part of it was to average Canadians to understand the comfortable life they've been living the last 30, 40 years. It may be changing, and be ready. And you may have to do what you just described and move to Moncton or move to Prince Albert, Saskatchewan.
It does seem like a signal.
Like, hey, this is the reality we're living in.
Well, so it's interesting. We're getting ready for a show on mining. And so we were doing some research on the most successful mining countries in the world. And so as we dug into it, pun, as we got into it, what we
Well
found
done,
is we started looking at projects like in China, for example.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, right? They roll up and create cities for 1 million people, like in
A year.
yeah.
They build out
with,
the
the, with the
infrastructure.
roads and rail and
Theater,
With townhomes,
theaters,
grocery.
malls. Like literally, they roll in, and in 1 year they have like home after home after home, and recreation and soccer fields and everything. And they basically take 1 million people. Okay, you're going over there.
And it may be a one
And then 1
generation.
million people show up and live in this stuff.
It could be a one generation project.
Yeah.
So any routes that you're making in that moment, if you're a mining family, you may be taken to another part of China.
so that could mean the Ring of Fire in Northern Ontario. Hey, if you want mining jobs, get ready to live north of Timmins because that's where the jobs are
But
going to be.
we are not good at that.
No,
we're
but
not
if we
good at setting up
seriously
that
wanted to-
infrastructure.
We have to build the infrastructure.
Think
for
about
it.
that. How many people do we like? Again, I'm not trying to be difficult with the Ring of Fire, but think about it. If we were seriously committed to the Ring of Fire, right? A road would not be the full. A road is a small thing. A road, it would be housing, recreation,
Hockey
water,
rink, rail,
hospital.
shopping. Yeah, yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
it's a military op, right? You
Yes.
looked at when you were
Yes.
younger, right? It's a military op, right? And yesterday on Brian's show, after the show, I talked to him about troops going to Greenland. It was really interesting, and we're going to do a little.
By the
show
way, if you can go back in time, look under military on our website. Brian Isted's a valuable
Oh, he's so smart.
set of
Yeah.
eyes on what our
Oh.
military is doing. A great episode there.
Yeah, and his perspective on the number of people who support like one warrior soldier. So one frontline soldier who's, the guy who's shooting
It's
or the guy who's
dozens.
blowing stuff. Exactly.
Dozens.
He said it was a 5 or 6 to 1
Yeah.
behind. So for each guy, there's 6 people supporting. So when they go somewhere, like there's 5 or 6 people on their tail who are setting up like housing, logistics, ammunition. Like there's a whole group of people that handle all the back stuff, the admin of it. And he was walking us through. Mining and projects to that size are the same thing. Like if we were seriously interested in doing that, we'd be basically landing on site with like 100,000 people.
And turn it into Fort McMurray.
Exactly. And
Like,
we'd be
like they
doing-
did for the tar sands, right?
Exactly. But we're fighting over, we're months.
Fighting over environment. We're fighting
Fighting
over
over-
indigenous
yeah, we're
rights.
not-
And by the way, we're hearing from many of the indigenous business people. We don't need the government's involvement. Where we have land here, we're good to mine. So let's get to
Because
work.
they want the money too.
Of course, they
but-
don't want subsidized. They want that. They
But
want the resource.
run a survey and ask people living in Toronto or Vancouver, how many of them are willing to relocate
Right.
to a town that,
Okay,
that
but
has no road
there?
yet.
Yeah, exactly. Well, even, ask them if they're willing to relocate to Timmins or Sudbury. Or,
They will say no.
They'll say
you're
no.
18, you
Yeah.
graduate high school. Okay, job market sucks. Do I want to go in the military? Do I want to maybe try something new and go to a mine for a couple of years, make some bank and live a life and then see where I want to go from life? That's the kind of people they need to recruit because there's the youth unemployment in Canada is such an issue. And they're saying, hey, there's jobs that will pay you $30, $40 an hour.
I see no news,
Today.
no spreads in the newspaper saying, come to the Ring of Fire where we're establishing a new life for you. And in the States, they do that. If
Right.
it was Vegas, for example, and they were getting into
Alaska.
or Alaska, they were developing it,
Yeah.
they would give you a reason to do it.
But is that the message we were getting? To Jim's point earlier, to where we got on this
Yeah.
tangent, is that the message he was sending us today? Because
Yes.
that was interesting. I was reading that too. I was listening
Yeah.
and I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I think he is saying, he's saying, listen, if you want your sovereignty,
Get ready.
we're going to have to roll up our sleeves here and,
He talked about a 300,000 person reserve force,
yes.
which we
made
haven't had
Brian
in long.
laugh because there's no way to enable that. Our reserves are ready. There's stories online and comments in our
Yeah.
own feed saying, "Hey man, I signed up for the reserve. I went through the medical and everything. Never heard back from them. I finally just gave up."
Yeah.
So that's
we're not even servicing people that want to be part
so
of it.
then Carney's saying, hey, from top down, leadership, infrastructure, recruiting, job placement, everything. You may have to go. This is the new way. The new town is going to spring up here on the border of Saskatchewan and Manitoba, and it's a drilling mining town, and that's where work is. Because think about how Canada, Western Canada, was settled. People going out there to farm and mine and drill once upon a time, and I think he's kind of saying you're right. This is how we're going to sustain us.
No, I hope we have the ability, listen, I hope and pray that we have the ability to get there and that we're having these conversations. The speed at which this is all moving.
2 weeks from now, we could be talking about our sovereignty for real.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, I think that's to your points, that's the critical timeline we're on. And I think
months.
people aren't kind of still getting it, as we're going through, and they're watching this, they're thinking, oh, this is just talk. No, there is a strategy. It's been laid down. There's a set of principles. Think about a business plan of a company, right? Which Trump would have done in his own world. Maybe he didn't do it so well. Maybe he did better at times. He did bankrupt a bunch of stuff. So, but he did do it, and he understands it. There is a mission. There is a value set. There is a task list. There's all these things that fall into this company. If you read this strategy paper, it very much is a mission, value, directional statement for a business plan almost.
It looks like a pivot for a major corporation.
Yes.
Business plan. Yeah, it does. It looks like, okay, here's how we did this. Now we're following the market this way. And it does look very, very business oriented. It also really smells of it to me. Sorry, guys.
No.
It smells crazy at 100 miles away.
What Trump's doing?
What he's doing
He's
here.
bonkers.
He's absolutely, I mean, is he? I don't know. But the problem with it is this document presented to a Canadian, presented to a European, presented to somebody in the Middle East, it looks really isolationist. It looks really
four or five.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Countries left. That's what it looks like.
Yeah. It looks
does.
like in the end, he is an emperor. He's using the Caesar model. He's kind of Genghis Khan for the modern day era.
with orange hair.
Yeah. Yeah. Although we never really determined that about Genghis Khan.
But to your point, gentlemen, so think about, you talked about the reality we're facing, how it's happening so fast. Most Canadians, most people around the world, they're getting clips from Jimmy Kimmel and Stephen Colbert.
Yeah.
It's a comedy soundbite on your social media feed about Trump and ha ha ha. And it's people making jokes and it's political cartoons without doing a deep dive and drilling down, as you want to do, Paul, into the nitty gritty of what's actually happening. And this is a bigger overarching thing in society where life is flying by. We're not really paying attention until it's too late.
Yeah. He's not, there's no comedy in any of this, right? Like, he's not looking at it. You saw his kind of direction on the media, TV, movies area, right?
Yeah.
He basically just, you guys go away, right? I'm not dealing with any of this. Comedians, everyone, this is serious
I'm not doing
stuff.
media. I do my own
exactly.
discussions as I see fit.
And
I'm not answering your questions.
yes, he's decided the direction he's going, and quite frankly, you can make light of it all you want. It's not going to change my direction. You can not like the fact that I want this country. You can not like the fact that I want to do this. You can not like any of it. It doesn't really change my course, which is very American. Having lived with Americans, that's what I did learn, quite frankly. It doesn't really matter. Once they've picked their direction, they're going in that direction. It's like they're going to move in that. And that's part of the
I think second
mantra.
term, Trump has realized the power that he left behind the last time he was around. He wants to shore up his power past 4 years. I mean, this is a guy that is likely to create a state of emergency in his own country
And doesn't care.
to keep power and not care.
He's 78.
Yeah.
He's on his last term, right? It's illegally. I mean, unless he does something illegally. His give a shit meter about what people think about him, about what the world thinks about him, about what happens, the collateral damage. He doesn't care.
Well, apparently,
And Carney actually said, hey, he was telling everyone, let's face it, this is what we're dealing with right now. Like, this is happening right now.
Yeah.
And we got to pivot right now.
Carney's not uncomfortable dealing on the internet in the international market. He's a banker.
Done it for 40 years.
And so he's not afraid to avoid doing business with America because he's seen what other countries are capable of doing.
Oh, yeah.
I think our sovereignty is the last question in this. And I think if you polled Canadians, they would tell you that they want to stay Canadian. But if you showed them even a marginally better life, their sovereignty, I think, would begin to fade into the distance a little bit. We are, as you point out, Jim, not the oldest country in the world.
No.
We wouldn't be the first time the U.S. went in and acquired a country with way more years of history and way more culture. I think that it is a real possibility that we have to take a look at how we're going to handle sovereignty. Does it come with the backing of China? Does it come with the backing of Europe? Do we have a Middle Eastern strategic partner? Because they are our neighbors. We don't have a hell of a lot of choice if they decide we are America.
It's the longest unguarded border in the world.
But we're going to be told, my guess is, and this is, estimate guess, right? My guess is after tomorrow, after the speech, we're going to be told about their relationship to NATO. And then from there, that'll be this next set of steps that'll be enacted, where we will at some point be told how that's all going to go.
Guys, let's do this again after Trump speaks.
Yes.
Let's regroup again and see where our opinions go after this, because I think you got a great point, Paul.
And
Until he speaks, anything that anybody says leading up or there afterward means very little unless it's related.
And Canadians have got to be really paying attention. And I don't care who you like, who you don't like, I don't like them. Let's start listening for a second right now. What's really happening? Because some pieces are falling into place that could have ramifications for our nation forever.
I don't like losing hair, but it's my reality. Right? So do we have to adjust? We'll see. Guys, thanks. I appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.